I'm Ashton Addison from EventChain for Investmentpitch Media and FinTech News Network. And today on Blockchain Interviews, we have Ben Jorgensen, the co-founder of Lattice Exchange and the CEO and co-founder of Constellation Network. Ben, welcome to the show and thanks for being here.
Ashton, thank you, man. Thanks for taking the time to do this. Really great to meet you.
Likewise, I'm excited to dive into these amazing blockchain projects that you're working on. And I'd just love to kick off the interview by starting to hear about your background in the space and what got you interested in helping to grow the blockchain industry.
Yeah, great question. Thank you. I've lived in San Francisco for about 10 years. And so technology is part of your DNA when you live there and you live in a product mindset. But I built my first company and sold it in 2015 that was all about aggregating digital music and dynamically placing it inside ads so that we had a very unique experience. And so once I sold the business, I kind of took my life and said, I'm going to do what they call a search fund. What am I as a leader? What is my network like? And what is the next big thing? And as such, I came across blockchain as one of the most fascinating spaces out there, with the potential of collecting community sentiment. I also built a restaurant, a fine dining restaurant called Gozu in San Francisco. And really kind of what my thesis was really about how communities come together to share new ideas and thoughts. And food is a very common thing, but in blockchain, there are these subcultures of families that bind together and never meet each other in the real world. And there is this kind of unspoken trust and understanding that you're not alone in this world. And so fascinating things are being built, not just from a technological perspective, but also from an emotional perspective. And so I first was introduced to blockchain by working as the chief revenue officer for a company called Exponential Organizations, which is kind of a derivative of the New York Times bestselling book called Exponential Organizations, written by Salim Ismail, that talks about how corporations need to adopt new technologies like blockchain in order to evolve industry practices and be relevant for the future.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. And yeah, this is the growth that we're experiencing right now is exponential. And we'll dive into the details here. But I want to kick it off for the viewers to get a high-level overview of, people understand Bitcoin, they understand Ethereum. There's all these other protocols that are working on different things. Can you give a high-level overview of Constellation Network, how it's helping grow the space, making it more secure, and what's unique?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of what we looked at were, how is blockchain evolving today? And with Bitcoin as the first protocol, there was really no application support for developers. Developers can't really build robust applications with Bitcoin beyond adding Bitcoin to an application. And so then Ethereum kind of popped up. And while they were still a synchronous chain, the protocol of Ethereum was more of a communications protocol than we typically see in technology. And so they created smart contracts as the first application that was a disintermediary between two parties, so removing that trust and programming elements into this contract that when they're met, they're executed. And so what Constellation evolved is said, hey, we think there's a different base layer protocol. So we're this third iteration protocol that's around taking packets of information or packets of data, securing that as it goes from A to B to C in a scalable and meaningful way. So a lot of our protocol is meant to integrate with existing applications, like adding immutability and features and functionalities around auditability in an Uber application. What happened to my payment that was processed? What trips were I on? Did I go on? Data privacy, all these things that are starting to become a hot topic are all around the big data narrative and initiative. And that's where really Constellation saw an opportunity, was to create a scalable protocol that could be integrated in any application.
Very cool. And yeah, it sounds like you guys have really nailed it on the head, because Constellation Network has been growing quite quickly, and even quicker than the space is growing right now, which is really fast. So that's exciting. Can you talk about the biggest partners and the funders that you've had that have helped with this such accelerated growth?
Yeah, absolutely. We kind of stuck our teeth into working with the federal government, and the reason we focus on the federal government is we spent about a year and a half meeting with pretty much every enterprise team that were building out blockchain tech solutions. But what we focused on, what we saw was there wasn't a clear opportunity to scale blockchain technology. You're kind of pitching it to emerging innovation teams, which don't have typically scalable budget. And so a lot of our focus was to shift to the federal government because they're actually the leaders in the forefront of innovation right now, which is kind of antithetical to what most people think, that the government's slow and cumbersome. But if you think about the government having the best interest in their country and securing their country, data protection, I mean, look at what we're going through at the election. On ballots and how they're accounted for and who's touching them. We're starting to approach a whole new world where the government is actually leading the forefront of innovation. So we, about a little over a year ago, we engaged with the United States Air Force to provide a secure communications protocol, that evolved protocol that could securely take packets of information and transfer it to different agencies in the government, as well as to their commercial partners in a very secure way. And this actually hasn't been done because every organization in the United States military in general, they're redefining what their data strategies are to meet the digital infrastructures of today and what kind of the onset of 5G networks have brought on. So it's a really fascinating time to be this third generation blockchain and protocol, if you will.
That's super interesting, Ben. And I understand where you're coming from, where you're saying that usually people think that the government is slow to adopt new regulations or new technology. But when they do adopt it, they've decided that it is worthy. And, it's something that will pave the way for others to adopt it very quickly because a trusted organization has adopted this. And I think it is really the key time, as you mentioned, not just the ballots, but everything to do with secure communications and just cybersecurity, especially at the government level, is needed to have the utmost security in that technology. So congratulations on that. And you mentioned enterprises. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's really fascinating to be at the forefront of these conversations because they're redefining their standards for how we send data and the process for collecting, transferring in a secure way. The government's been very open around using micro payments for licensing of software and using that, using cryptocurrency as a means to account for usage-based software. So we are actually building some really cool things that incorporate not just alternative networks, but also digital currency there. And they're moving faster than the enterprise space, which is really mind-boggling. You think that enterprise leads innovation, but I would say quite the opposite. And so it's been fun to kind of work between both worlds. Now, we do work with many enterprise organizations. We're actually working with a group called Space Isaac, which is a space consortium built by Lockheed Martin and aerospace dedicated to identifying threat vectors in space between commercial and public sector, so private and public sector, and how they use data from satellites. We're also part of the MOBI initiative that where we're the ones creating a standard for how autonomous vehicles share data. A lot of data is collected around LiDARs. LiDARs are used to kind of create spatial awareness, and then they feed that in to kind of analyze how an autonomous vehicle works. So we're actually working across not just the federal government, but many partners, both enterprise and public.
Very cool. And there is definitely a lot of enterprise adoption going on right now and institutional interest and investment in this space throughout 2020, which is, I think, bringing a lot of extra legitimacy. And, by now everyone knows everything in here that where there's value provided to services like government organizations is legitimate. But people that at first are still sitting on the fence now are sort of jumping into this technology to try to take advantage of it as well. And because of the growth of the industry this year in Bitcoin alone, but also in the DeFi space, which is where the exponential growth has really kicked it up. It's done a tenfold increase in the value locked into these decentralized finance applications just since Q1 of this year. And that is almost unheard of in any industry to grow that quickly. And I know that Constellation Network and your team is also working on building the Lattice Exchange, which is a DeFi app. If you could talk about what you've done there and how you've really capitalized on these opportunities to bring value, that would be great.
Yeah, the next step was Lattice Exchange. We just released our token right now, and we are proud to release it on Uniswap, as we truly believe in the decentralized space. And you look at centralized exchanges as having just so many, lack of transparency. And so, the highlights of the space around automated market making algorithms are coming to the forefront as people just don't want to deal with these centralized exchanges. Governments are cracking down on CEOs because there are shady policies being done. And it makes me prouder than ever to be building meaningful technology that brings value to people in this space. And so our focus over the next 6 months is to deploy our platform. Our platform will release in beginning of December. Early next year, we'll introduce the governance of our network, which we are pushing to be truly decentralized and owned by the community that own Lattice tokens. We want them to be the ones responsible for creating value in the exchange, so that we kind of shift what it means to be a part of this crypto trading world and give that ownership back to people. As such, we'll be introducing improved features around zero trading settlement fees, all things that are plaguing the existing DeFi space right now, so that we can make it easier for retail investors to build predictable businesses on top, not having to worry about dynamic and volatile gas fees. So all these things are really kind of the features and stepping stones to bridging traditional financial world with the digital asset ecosystem.
Very cool. And if the viewers are looking to learn more about the Lattice Exchange or get involved as a community member and also learn about Constellation Network, what's the best way for them to jump in and get involved?
Yeah, I would say if you're looking to get involved and build your own application with Constellation, we're early in those days, and we're building out a funding arm called the Stardust Collective, where we're kind of looking at unique ideas around ways that support data privacy and build robust applications on top of Constellation. So constellationnetwork.io. We're also in our Telegram. I jump in all the time and give diatribes on the State of the Union and conversations and engage with people one-on-one. Lattice.exchange is also the Lattice website, where you'll get info on some of our incredible backers, such leaders in the space like GSR, one of the best market makers in the world, and liquidity providers, all the way to GDA, FBG Capital, and Alphabet Fund. So you can learn a lot there, and just reach out to us in Telegram.
Sounds great. I'll leave those links in the description box below for the viewers as well. Thank you so much for taking the time, Ben. You guys are really working on some really interesting stuff. I'm wishing you all the best moving forward with both Lattice Exchange and Constellation Network, and let's follow up in the near future.
Addison, thank you so much for the time, and I really appreciate the great questions. This has been fun, man. Hope to see you soon.